This story is titled, Sister Stole My Wedding Dress to Wear at Her Own Wedding, Even Though She Wasn't Engaged. Now her fiance is calling me, saying he needs to talk. I never thought I'd be writing this story, but life has a way of throwing the most absurd situations at you when you least expect them. My name is Emma Mitchell, and until 6 months ago, I was living what I considered a perfectly normal life. I'm 32, working as a pediatric nurse at Boston Children's Hospital, and I was engaged to the love of my life, James. My younger sister, Olivia, who's 28, has always been what my mother diplomatically calls a free spirit. That's really just a polite way of saying she's impulsive, self-centered, and has never held down a job for more than 8 months. She's bounced between being a yoga instructor, a cryptocurrency enthusiast, a self-proclaimed life coach, and most recently, an Instagram wellness influencer with barely 2,000 followers. Meanwhile, our parents have been quietly supporting her lifestyle, paying her rent for a luxury apartment in downtown Boston that I couldn't afford even with my actual career. Don't get me wrong, I love my sister. We grew up sharing everything, clothes, secrets, dreams. But as we got older, the sharing became increasingly one-sided. Olivia would borrow my designer bags for months, wear my favorite shoes until they were scuffed beyond repair, and somehow always managed to charm our parents into taking her side when I complained. James proposed to me last Christmas during a surprise trip to Vermont. It was perfect. A cozy cabin, snow falling outside, and the vintage emerald ring that had belonged to his grandmother. I'd always wanted something unique, and James knew me well enough to skip the traditional diamond. We set the date for June 15th, giving us plenty of time to plan the perfect summer wedding. The dress was my pride and joy. I'd saved for months to afford it, a handmade creation by a local designer who specialized in vintage-inspired pieces. It was ivory silk with delicate lace overlays, featuring hand-embroidered butterflies that seemed to dance across the fabric. The designer, Marina, had incorporated pieces of my mother's wedding veil into the design, making it truly one of a kind. The dress cost nearly $15,000, almost my entire savings, but every time I looked at it hanging in my spare room, I knew it was worth it. Olivia, naturally, had opinions about my wedding plans. She thought the venue, a restored 19th century greenhouse, was too hipster. The menu, locally sourced, with plenty of vegan options, was trying too hard. And the dress? Well, she never actually said anything about the dress. She just got this strange, quiet look whenever it was mentioned. I should have recognized that look. It was the same one she'd get as a teenager before borrowing my prom dress or my first designer purse. The week before everything went sideways, life was hectic but happy. Final dress alterations were done, RSVPs were counted, and James and I were putting the finishing touches on our honeymoon plans. 3 weeks in New Zealand, splitting our time between wilderness adventures and luxury lodges. My biggest worry was whether we'd packed enough warm clothes for the Southern Hemisphere winter. Then came that Tuesday night. I was working a late shift at the hospital, dealing with a particularly challenging case involving twins with pneumonia, when my phone started buzzing with notifications. First, it was a string of missed calls from my mother. Then came the text from my best friend and maid of honor, Rachel. OMG, have you seen Olivia's Instagram? Followed by, call me ASAP. I had no idea then that my sister had just set in motion a chain of events that would turn my life upside down, challenge everything I thought I knew about my family, and ultimately lead to that strange phone call from a man I'd never met, her supposed fiancé, saying he needed to talk to me about something important. Looking back now, I realized that Tuesday night was the last moment of my old life, before everything I thought I knew about love, family, and trust would be put to the test in ways I never could have imagined. I ducked into the hospital break room, hands shaking as I pulled up Instagram. Olivia's latest post nearly made me drop my phone. There she was, wearing my wedding dress, posing in what looked like a hotel room with its generic art prints and beige walls. The caption read, "Sometimes the perfect moment calls for the perfect dress. Hashtag surprise wedding, hashtag wedding day, hashtag true love." My head spun as I scrolled through her story updates from the past few hours. There were dozens of photos. Olivia twirling in my dress, Olivia pretending to walk down an aisle between hotel room beds, Olivia blowing kisses to the camera. The dress didn't even fit her properly. She's 5 inches shorter than me, and the hem dragged on the carpet. The carefully fitted bodice gaped at her shoulders, and she'd cinched it with what looked like a gold belt from Target. I called my mother immediately. She answered on the first ring, her voice tight with anxiety. "Emma, sweetheart, try to stay calm." "Stay calm? Stay calm? She stole my wedding dress. How did she even get into my apartment?" There was a pause, followed by my mother's guilty admission. "She asked to borrow your spare key last week. She said she wanted to leave you a surprise wedding gift. And you believed her?" I couldn't keep the incredulity out of my voice. "After everything she's done? She seemed so sincere this time," my mother defended weakly. "She said she'd been doing a lot of self-reflection during her meditation retreat." "Her what?" "She told me she was in Bali doing a social media collaboration." "Oh." Another guilty pause. "Well, wherever she was, she said she wanted to make things right with you before your wedding." I ended the call and immediately tried calling Olivia. Straight to voicemail. I texted her. "Where are you? Bring back my dress right now." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally. "Don't be so materialistic, Em. You can afford another one. I need this dress tonight," Marcus proposed. Marcus. I'd never even heard of a Marcus. My phone buzzed again. A new Instagram story from Olivia. She was now in what looked like a chapel's waiting room, still in my dress, arm in arm with a tall, dark-haired man who looked vaguely familiar. The caption. "In just 1 hour, I'll be Mrs. Marcus Chen. Sometimes when you just know." That's when it hit me, Marcus Chen. I knew that name. He was the new cardiothoracic surgeon at my hospital, the one all the nurses had been gossiping about. Brilliant, wealthy family, recently transferred from Johns Hopkins. I'd never spoken to him directly, but I'd seen him in the halls. He couldn't have been more than 35. My phone buzzed again. A text from Rachel. "I found out where they are. Remember that 24-hour wedding chapel near the airport? The one we always joke about? I have a friend who works there. They're scheduled for midnight." I checked my watch. 11:15 p.m. Just then, my supervisor stuck her head into the break room. "Emma, the twins' fever is spiking. We need you." I stood there frozen, torn between my professional duties and the urgent need to stop my sister from getting married in my stolen wedding dress to a man who might not even know she existed a week ago. That's when my phone lit up with an unknown number. The text read, "Emma Mitchell? This is Marcus Chen. We need to talk. It's about your sister, and it's important. She's not who she claims to be." I looked at my supervisor, then at my phone, then at the time, 11:17 p.m. "I'm sorry," I said, already pulling off my scrubs top to reveal the tank top underneath. "Family emergency. I have to go. Can you get Sarah to cover for me?" I didn't wait for an answer. I grabbed my bag and ran for the parking garage, my mind racing. What did Marcus mean? Who was my sister pretending to be? And how had she managed to convince a prestigious surgeon to agree to a midnight wedding at a chapel better known for Elvis impersonators than actual ceremonies? I had 43 minutes to get to the chapel and stop whatever madness was unfolding. As I gunned my Honda Civic out of the parking garage, I had no idea I was driving straight into something far more complicated than just a stolen wedding dress. The drive to the airport chapel should have taken 30 minutes. I made it in 20, breaking more traffic laws than I cared to admit. As I screeched into the parking lot of the little chapel of eternal bliss, my phone buzzed with another text from Marcus. "Don't confront her directly. Meet me behind the chapel. There's more going on than you know." The chapel was exactly as tacky as you'd expect. A pink stucco building with plastic cherubs guarding the entrance and a neon sign promising weddings in 60 minutes or less. Through the front windows, I could see Olivia pacing in my dress, talking animatedly on her phone. My dress. My $15,000 dress that she was probably getting makeup stains all over. I circled around to the back of the building, where a tall figure waited in the shadows. Marcus Chen looked different from the glimpses I caught at the hospital. His usual confident surgeon's demeanor was replaced by something more nervous, almost haunted. He was wearing a tuxedo that still had the rental tags hanging from the sleeve. "Thank you for coming," he said, running a hand through his already disheveled hair. "I'm sorry about all this. I only found out who your sister really was 2 hours ago. What do you mean, who she really was? She's Olivia Mitchell, my sister. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Is she? Because for the past 3 weeks, she's been introducing herself as Dr. Emma Mitchell, pediatric surgeon at Boston Children's Hospital. She told me you were her unemployed younger sister who was jealous of her success. My jaw dropped. She what? It gets worse, Marcus continued. She's been wearing a lab coat with your name on it, showing up at medical conferences. That's where I met her, at the cardiology symposium last month. She gave a whole presentation on pioneering pediatric surgical techniques. I thought it was brilliant, until I realized she'd stolen it word for word from a Johns Hopkins paper published last year. My head was spinning. But how? She doesn't know anything about medicine. She can barely handle taking aspirin. She's very convincing. She had business cards, a LinkedIn profile, everything. She even had photos of herself in surgical scrubs, which I'm now realizing were probably taken in a Halloween costume. He checked his watch. She's been telling everyone at the hospital she's on sabbatical, doing research. Nobody questioned it, because she always managed to avoid any actual medical conversations. Just then, my phone lit up with a call from James. I'd been so caught up in the chaos that I hadn't even told my fiancé what was happening. Before I could answer, Marcus grabbed my wrist. Wait. There's something else you need to know. The reason I agreed to this rushed wedding, she told me she was pregnant. With my child. She even had ultrasound pictures. That's impossible, I said automatically. Olivia had her tubes tied 2 years ago after a health scare. She made a whole Instagram series about it. Marcus's face went pale. Then I guess she stole those ultrasound pictures too. Probably from one of your patient's files. The realization hit me like a truck. Oh God. That's how she got all the medical information. She must have been going through my work laptop when she was in my apartment. I keep backup files of all my cases. I felt sick. This wasn't just about a stolen dress anymore. This was medical fraud, identity theft, and who knows what else. Suddenly, we heard a commotion from the front of the chapel. Raised voices, something shattering. Marcus and I exchanged glances and ran toward the sound, rounding the corner just in time to see another man in a tuxedo storming through the chapel's front door. Olivia, he shouted. What the hell is going on? Why is my credit card being charged for a wedding here when you're supposed to be marrying me tomorrow in Providence? Marcus turned to me, his face a mask of shock. Who is that? I shook my head, watching as the scene devolved into chaos. I have no idea. But I'm starting to think we've only scratched the surface of whatever my sister's been up to. The night was far from over, and my stolen wedding dress was now the least of my concerns. Inside the chapel, time seemed to stand still. My stolen wedding dress swished dramatically as Olivia spun between her two supposed fiancés, her face cycling through expressions like a slot machine. Shock, calculation, innocence, fear. The new arrival, a tall man with salt and pepper hair and an expensive-looking watch, was waving his phone around, displaying what appeared to be wedding invitations. I've spent over $50,000 on our wedding tomorrow, he shouted. The governor's coming. The governor? Marcus and I said in unison. Richard, Olivia said soothingly, reaching for the older man's arm with her left hand, which, I noticed, bore a massive diamond ring that definitely hadn't been there in her Instagram photos from 2 hours ago. I can explain everything. Please do, said a new voice. We all turned to see Rachel standing in the doorway, holding her phone like a weapon. Explain why you're on the local news right now. She turned her phone around, showing us a breaking news headline. Boston police seek woman in connection with high-profile investment scheme. Below it was Olivia's picture, not in my wedding dress, but in a conservative business suit, her hair pulled back severely. The caption identified her as Dr. Catherine Wells, CEO of Meditech Innovations. Oh my God, Marcus breathed. She pitched me an investment opportunity last week. I was going to write her a check tomorrow after the wedding. Let me guess, said the man called Richard, his face darkening. A revolutionary new pediatric surgical device? Guaranteed returns of 300% within 6 months? Marcus nodded slowly. She got me for $200,000 last month, Richard said. I'm the CEO of Rhode Island General Hospital. She showed up at a healthcare conference, gave a brilliant presentation about medical technology innovations. Had all the paperwork, prototypes, everything. When was this conference? I asked, already dreading the answer. 3 weeks ago, right after she got back from her fellowship at Stanford Medical Center. Her what? Marcus and I exclaimed together. Well, that's what she told me, Richard said. She said she was Dr. Catherine Wells, that she'd done her residency at Mass General. No, Marcus interrupted. She told me she was Dr. Emma Mitchell, that she did her residency at Boston Children's. Actually, said another voice, this one belonging to a young man in a rumpled suit who'd apparently been sitting quietly in the back pew this whole time. She told me she was Dr. Sarah Chun, that she was your sister from San Francisco Memorial. He looked at Marcus. I'm Kevin, by the way. She was supposed to marry me next weekend in Cape Cod. I already paid for the yacht. My head was spinning. The chapel was starting to feel like a bizarre support group for people my sister had conned. How many weddings had she planned? How many identities had she stolen? Just then, my phone buzzed. A text from James. Emma, why is your sister telling people on Facebook that I died in a tragic skiing accident last month? And why does her post have 3,000 sympathy comments? Before I could process that, the chapel doors burst open again. This time, it was my parents. My mother took one look at the assembled crowd, at Olivia in my mangled wedding dress, and promptly fainted. My father caught her just before she hit the floor. Oh good, Olivia said brightly, as if she were hosting a dinner party that had just gotten its final guest. Now everyone's here. I suppose it's time to tell you all the truth. She reached up and pulled off her blonde hair, revealing shorter, dark hair underneath. When she spoke again, her voice was different, deeper, with a slight accent I couldn't place. First of all, she said, my name isn't actually Olivia Mitchell. And this isn't even the most expensive wedding dress I've stolen this month. The room erupted in chaos, but all I could focus on was the fact that the person I'd grown up with, shared a bathroom with, fought over clothes with, might not even be my sister. And judging by the sirens growing louder in the distance, we were about to get a lot more company. The police arrived before Olivia could explain further, their flashing lights painting the chapel walls in alternating red and blue. But instead of looking worried, my baby sister smiled, that same confident smile I'd seen thousands of times across the breakfast table growing up. She raised her hand slowly, still wearing my dress. Wait, she said to the approaching officers. I'm one of yours. Special Agent Diana Torres, FBI. She reached into a hidden pocket in my dress, winded she had pockets to my dress, and pulled out a badge. I've been deep undercover for the past 28 years. The lead officer checked his phone, made a call, and to my utter disbelief, nodded respectfully. Agent Torres, we got the alert about your operation concluding tonight. My mother, who had just regained consciousness, promptly fainted again. 28 years. I whispered. But that would mean, since you were 4, Emma. She, Agent Torres, said gently. Your real sister, the real Olivia Mitchell, was taken by a child trafficking ring when she was 6 months old. Your parents were part of a witness protection program after your father testified against a major crime syndicate. The FBI placed me with your family both to protect you and to maintain your parents' cover while we worked to dismantle the organization. My father was sitting now, holding my mother's hand. He didn't look surprised, he looked guilty. We couldn't tell you, Emma. It would have put everyone in danger. Only 3 people in the FBI even knew about this operation. But, I struggled to form words. The childhood memories? The fights over toys? The time you broke your arm falling out of our treehouse? All real, Agent Torres said. I was supposed to maintain my cover at all costs. I lived that life. In many ways, I became Olivia Mitchell. She gestured to the assembled crowd of angry fiancés. These gentlemen are all connected to the same criminal enterprise we've been tracking. Their hospitals and medical companies have been unwittingly laundering money for years. So the investment scheme, Marcus began, was a sting operation. She confirmed. We needed documented evidence of how the money moved through the healthcare system. Each of you was carefully chosen because of your connections to suspected parts of the organization. And the weddings? Kevin asked from his pew. A way to get close to you quickly, to gain access to your financial records before the syndicate could warn you. She turned to me. I am sorry about the dress, Emma. But I needed something dramatic enough to bring everyone together tonight. We couldn't risk tipping off the real targets by making arrests at different locations. As if on cue, more sirens approached. Through the chapel windows, I could see black SUVs surrounding the building. The real arrests are happening right now, Agent Torres explained. In 12 different cities. The evidence we gathered through these gentlemen's companies helped us track down the original trafficking ring. And, she paused, looking at me with genuine emotion. We found her. The real Olivia. She's alive. My knees gave out. Marcus caught me before I hit the ground. Where? I managed to ask. Singapore. Living under another name. She was adopted by a family who had no idea about her true identity. She's a doctor too, as it happens. A real one. Agent Torres, my sister who wasn't my sister, smiled sadly. She's flying in tomorrow. Your parents can finally meet their younger daughter. Their real younger daughter. The chapel doors burst open again, this time revealing a team of FBI agents in tactical gear. Agent Torres straightened up, transforming before our eyes from my chaotic baby sister into a commanding federal agent. Right, she said briskly. Gentlemen, you'll all need to come with us to give official statements. Your cooperation tonight has been invaluable to this operation. She turned to me one last time. The FBI will compensate you for the dress, of course. And Emma, thank you. For everything. For giving me a family, even if it was just for a mission. As she turned to leave, she paused. Oh, and James didn't really die in a skiing accident. That post will be deleted within the hour. I just needed to make sure he wouldn't show up tonight and complicate the operation. I watched as my sister who wasn't my sister walked out of the chapel, my ruined wedding dress trailing behind her, leaving me with a story I could never fully tell, a family that was both more and less than what I'd always believed, and the knowledge that somewhere over the Pacific Ocean, my real sister was flying home. The next 24 hours passed in a blur. After giving my statement to the FBI, I found myself sitting in my parents' living room at 4 a.m., surrounded by old photo albums. Every picture of Olivia, of Agent Torres, took on a new meaning. The Christmas mornings, family vacations, graduations, all carefully orchestrated parts of an elaborate operation. She really did love you, you know, my mother said softly, looking at a photo of us at my high school graduation. Diana, I mean. She wasn't supposed to get so involved. But she did. How did you handle it? I asked. Knowing every day that she wasn't really Olivia? That your real daughter was out there somewhere? My father set down his coffee cup, his hand shaking slightly. We almost broke the agreement several times. Especially when you girls were teenagers. Watching you grow up together, seeing how close you were, sometimes we forgot she wasn't really ours. He paused. The FBI wanted to pull her out 5 years ago, when they first got a lead on the trafficking ring. We begged them to let her stay until they found Olivia. The real Olivia. My phone buzzed, another text from James. He'd been incredibly understanding about the whole situation, especially the fake death announcement that had his mother calling him in hysterics at midnight. Just landed back in Boston. His message read, Should I come over? Before I could reply, my mother's phone rang. It was the FBI liaison. The flight from Singapore had landed early. She's here, my mother whispered, her face pale. Our baby is here. We drove to the FBI field office in silence. My mind was racing with questions. Would she look like me? Would we have anything in common? Would she hate us for not finding her sooner? The conference room they led us to was bright and sterile. And there she was, Dr. Olivia Mitchelton. She had kept her adoptive family's name, sitting at the table in a crisp blue blazer. She was exactly my height, with the same dark hair and green eyes as our mother. She looked nothing like the sister I'd grown up with. Hello, she said, her voice carrying a slight Singaporean accent. I've been looking at pictures of all of you. 4 hours. It's so strange. I grew up looking nothing like my family, and now... She gestured at her face, then at mine. We could be twins. We spent hours talking. She told us about her life, her adoptive parents, who were flying in the next day, her work as a cardiothoracic surgeon, her husband and 2-year-old daughter. She showed us pictures, told us stories, asked about our lives. It was surreal, like meeting a long-lost friend who somehow had my face. Then she said something that made my heart stop. "I know this is overwhelming for everyone," she said carefully, "but there's something else you need to know. Something I discovered during my residency." She pulled out her phone, showing us a medical file. "I did a DNA research project trying to find my birth family. The results were unexpected. Emma, have you ever had your DNA tested?" Before she could continue, the door burst open. Agent Torres, Diana, stood there, still wearing my wedding dress, now accessorized with handcuffs. "Stop," she said, her voice urgent. "Don't tell them anything else. The operation isn't over. We were wrong about everything." 2 FBI agents rushed in after her, trying to pull her back. She resisted, looking straight at me. "Emma, listen to me. You need to get your DNA tested. Right now. Today. Before." The agents dragged her away, her last words cut off by the closing door. We all sat in stunned silence until another agent entered, looking flustered. "I apologize for that interruption," he said. "Agent Torres is no longer authorized to be part of this case. Please continue your reunion." But Olivia and I were looking at each other with the same expression. What had Diana been trying to tell us? And why was she in handcuffs? My phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. "Don't trust anyone. Not even your DNA." The real Olivia reached across the table and grabbed my hand. "I think," she said quietly, "we need to talk about what I found in those DNA tests. Because if I'm right, this story is far from over." The next few days unraveled everything I thought I knew about my life. The DNA test results came back with impossible numbers. Olivia and I were indeed sisters, but we weren't just sisters. We were identical twins. More impossibly, our DNA showed we were both 28, not 32 and 28 as we believed. "That's what I found in my research," Olivia explained as we sat in my apartment, surrounded by papers and medical records. "Genetically, we're the same age. Which means, the story about you being kidnapped as a baby," I finished, "was a lie." We pieced it together slowly, with help from Diana's case files, which mysteriously appeared on my doorstep the day after her arrest. The truth was more complicated than any of us had imagined. We had been part of a classified government project studying separated twins. Our parents, our real parents, had been told one of their twins died at birth. Instead, we were deliberately separated, one of us staying in Boston, the other sent to Singapore. The Mitchell couple we knew as our parents were government agents, assigned to monitor half of the twin study. The criminal syndicate, the trafficking ring, the witness protection story, all elaborate covers for a decades-long psychological experiment. Diana Torres had discovered the truth 5 years ago. Her FBI credentials were real, but her assignment wasn't what she claimed. She had been investigating the twin study program, working to expose it. She inserted herself into our family not to protect us, but to gather evidence. "But why the elaborate scheme with the wedding dress?" I asked Olivia as we looked through Diana's files. "Why all those fake fiancés?" "Because," said a familiar voice, "I needed to create enough chaos to get everyone in one room without the program directors realizing what was happening." Diana stood in my doorway, no longer in my wedding dress, no longer in handcuffs. She held up her badge. "The handcuffs were for show. Had to make the program directors think they'd stop me." She sat down with us, pulling out more files. "Those men at the chapel, they weren't just random marks. They were all children of other separated twins from the study. The program directors had placed them in strategic positions, hospitals, medical companies, to continue monitoring the subjects. By staging the investment scheme, I could gather them all together and expose the pattern." "But why?" Olivia and I asked simultaneously, something we've been doing more and more lately. "Because the study didn't end with your generation," Diana said softly. "It's still going on. And," she looked at Olivia, "your 2-year-old daughter? She has a twin sister in Melbourne. I'm here to help you find her." Olivia's face went pale. I grabbed her hand, my twin's hand, as Diana continued. The dress wasn't just a dress. I needed something valuable enough, meaningful enough, to ensure everyone would focus on it rather than asking too many questions. I am sorry about the damage, though. She reached into her bag and pulled out a check. Full reimbursement, as promised. Plus a little extra for creative alterations. She stood to leave, then turned back. Oh, and Emma, you might want to call James. He's been doing some DNA research of his own since this all happened. Ask him about his twin brother in Vancouver. After she left, Olivia and I sat in silence, processing everything. Finally, I picked up my phone to call James, while Olivia started searching for flights to Melbourne. You know, Olivia said as I dialed, we should probably return the wedding dress. Get you a new one. I looked at the garment bag hanging in my closet, containing my now infamous dress. Actually, I said, I think I'll keep it. It's seen too much history to let it go now. Besides, I smiled at my twin. Maybe your daughter and her sister can use it someday. Together. My phone connected, and James answered. Before I could say anything, he spoke. Emma, you're not going to believe what I just found out about my family. I looked at Olivia, both of us thinking the same thing. This story wasn't ending. In many ways, it was just beginning. And somewhere across the city, Diana Torres was already planning her next mission, probably wearing someone else's clothes.